Hi, and welcome to the show where we share the stories of the many who intersect with our healthcare system but are rarely heard from. My name is Kevin Poe, founder and editor of KevinMD. Today on the show, we have Emmanuel Oha Bunwa. He is an emergency physician and he co-wrote the KevinMD article, COVID-19 Vaccine and Disinformation, How Healthcare Providers Can Leverage Social Media to Combat This Trend. Emmanuel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Such an honor to be here, and thank you so much for having me.
So we'll get into the article that you co-wrote in a little bit, but first off, can you share your story and journey to where you are today?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm Emmanuel Habunwa. I am a current fourth-year emergency medicine resident at Yale New Haven Health. I was born in Nigeria. I actually grew up there. My parents were pastors. They did a lot of work and taught us about community engagement and service at a young age. I went to military boarding school where, the focus was discipline. We moved to the US when I was 13. I went to a high school for health professions where I discovered medicine and spent a lot of time, like every summer in the hospital, just shadowing and learning so much about medicine. And then went to Hopkins for undergrad, where I studied neuroscience and psychology, and was fortunate to have gotten a full ride to come to Yale for medical school. Did the MD MBA, and my focus in business school was thinking about behavioral economics and how one can use that to tackle health disparities. I'm currently finishing up residency and super duper excited to be joining faculty at UT Southwestern in Dallas, where I'll be doing health equity work and work related to disparities. So really, really excited to be here, and thank you so much for having me.
And through your lens in the emergency department, we are speaking towards the end of April. So what exactly are you seeing now as it relates to the pandemic?
Definitely things are a little bit better. In terms of numbers of COVID patients coming in with COVID, it's been a lot better than in the craziness of the pandemic. I think it's been way better, and numbers are fluctuating. More people are getting the vaccines, which is definitely helping. And then like numbers of other, because during the pandemic, we had a bunch of patients who didn't come in because they were scared of COVID. And so they had like various other conditions and then come in, and now they're coming back in, which is helpful because we don't want people having strokes and staying at home, or having heart attacks and staying at home. So we've been very thankful for that return of patients.
Now that we're seeing light at the end of the proverbial tunnel over the past year plus, what are some of the top things that you've learned over the past year that you want to take away from this?
Oh my gosh. One is just the value of resilience. I think it was, especially when I remember I was actually working in the ICU during when COVID first started, when at least we were worrying about the cases. And it was like every day there was a change of policy. Oh my God. We're not supposed to wear regular face masks. We're supposed to wear N95s. Oh my gosh. Oh, maybe I was exposed. It's just things changing because we were just finding out new information every day, and just trusting that things will work out at some point, and just pushing. I think when you see a lot of death and you see a lot of people not doing well, it can be easy to feel, like to be depressed or down. I think one of the things I found that was very helpful for me was, building on my support system, having like a happy wall where I put stuff that made me happy, things that made me smile, and just thinking about those things when in the midst of a lot of craziness. I think those were some of the lessons I learned during that time.
So let's transition now into the KevinMD article that you co-wrote, and it's titled COVID-19 Vaccine and Disinformation, How Healthcare Providers Can Leverage Social Media to Combat This Trend. Now, I've been involved in the social media space for close to 20 years, and that intersection between misinformation and social media has been going on for a long time, way before COVID. So I'm definitely interested in hearing your perspective on this. So for those who didn't read that article that you co-wrote, can you just summarize it for my audience and share the story of why you decided to write it?
It was kind of interesting. I've been fortunate to have a lot of mentees, people interested in medicine, business, and all of that. And one of my mentees and I, Victor Abafe, were talking. This was in December. So, Pfizer had just gotten the emergency use authorization, the Pfizer vaccine, and we were talking, and we were like, "Oh my gosh, why are we getting so much in terms of disinformation related to the vaccine?" I talk a little bit about this in the article where you had one picture of someone, a video of some woman getting the shot, and then immediately starts climbing walls as if like she was possessed by a demon. And you just see all these things, and you're like, what can we do about this? And so that's where the idea was born. I was fortunate to be good friends with Dr. Onyema Obuagu, who is the head of the Pfizer vaccine trial and has been really, really an evangelist everywhere. Good Morning America, everywhere, just talking about the vaccine. And so we just came together and said, let's see what we can do in terms of social media. The overall premise was, greater than 40% of people who are looking for healthcare information use social media as a source of stuff. We have such a proliferation right now of mis and disinformation related to everything related to the vaccines, especially. Physicians have physicians and healthcare workers in general have such a strong pull in increasing uptake of anything related to health. So how can we use our platforms to be able to combat the proliferation of misinformation going on? So one of the things we talked about was, the social psychology principle of social proof. This is something we learned in business school. You learned in intro social psychology class, where, for the audience and those who might not know, it's about in times when there's question in terms of uncertainty, people are more likely to do something when they see people that look like them doing it. Now, I loved how Dr. Fauci and all these important people were taking the shots and promising to do it in public. But our thought was, especially in the African community in America and in the underserved community, they need people like us who they know. Like for my example, my parents are pastors, like in the church, for example, people like us who they know, who have gotten the shots, to show that we have, and to be able to listen and answer whatever questions. So that was where we wanted. So we wanted people to, do an all-out blitz of pictures, of short, like important content related to the vaccine on their social media profiles, and try to combat the disinformation that was going on. So that was pretty exciting to see, like, places like Yale, for example, we had the hashtag Crush COVID, where people would take pictures, everybody flexing their muscles, in front of the banner, and just various people doing a lot of work to combat it. So I think that was really exciting. The next part for me after that was then, how can I use that article to be able to make a difference, not just in social media, but personally? And so I started, my parents used to teach us the phrase, teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime, give a man fish and you feed him for a day. And so we were like, how can we help people spot misinformation? So I held a few of these talks at like churches and things like that, where I would I would show a video and then point out why this was wrong or how they could have spotted this. And then I pointed them to like various Instagram and Twitter and whatever profiles of people who have important information, people like you who are always doing good work and talking about like good healthcare information. And like there's one Risa Hashino who's in New York, a New York public health and pediatrician, who has like she's presented in such succinct and excellent ways. And so I would point people to these pages because I felt like at least, they can get these small nuggets of information that will help to combat disinformation. And that's kind of what the article was. And I talk about a few other things that I'd like for the audience to read about, but that was kind of the meat of the article.
Now, over the past year during the pandemic, can you recall a time in the emergency room where you encountered a patient who received bad information that he or she may have read on social media?
Oh my God, yes, like constantly. Uh, people saying, the pandemic is a hoax. People saying that the vaccine is a hoax. Oh my gosh, it's pretty consistent, and it's sad, but at the same time, one of the things I learned during this time, and one of the lessons, you asked about lessons earlier on, was I think because we're in a very polarized society, that we've gotten to a point where the talk of vaccines can be a political issue. I think one of the important ways to like combat this is just listening to understand as opposed to listening to correct. I think
Hmm.
a lot of times we're focused on listening to correct people. And my goal and my approach was I'm not trying to correct um, I'm not trying to correct anything. I'm just here to answer whatever questions you might have and give you the tools to make the right decision. And that's kind of the approach I had with patients. That's the approach I had with people at my church, people all over, whoever I talk to is, you know, I know, for Black people, and I've listened to a few of the podcasts, that have come up recently on your channel, and like, Black people and people of color have this mistrust of healthcare and whatever that's going on, and that's valid. But how can we make sure that we are given the right information to people and hoping that they make the right decisions for themselves and their family?
Now, walk me through one of those patient encounters where someone comes to you with clearly false information that he or she may have read on social media, and you outline some of the techniques that you use in terms of encountering this patient. How successful were you in trying to relay proper information? And in general, what was their response to what you were doing?
Hypothetical patients who come in like that, who might ask a question like that, I think one of the things would be like, what is your what do you think is wrong with the vaccine? And they're like, well, I heard that there were 7 people who got killed or who died from the vaccine. I'm like, where did you find it? They showed me a video, and I'm like, okay, well, look at this video. Let's talk. For example, this video says breaking news, right? It doesn't say any news source. I don't know any news source in the history of the universe that would just come in and say breaking news and not say breaking news CNN, breaking
Mhm.
news Kevin Poe MD, breaking news this. So that immediately should be a question mark. Secondly, it's saying the vaccine. Um, there's like there's hundreds of vaccines out there that we're in testing. Thankfully, there aren't that many like out there, but there's a bunch of them in testing. So like, if something says the vaccine, you should also question it and be like, what vaccine? How did it cause 7 people? Thirdly, the voice was like a automated voice. It wasn't a real voice. I'm like, and did you find this in any other news article or anything? So like, I just asked those questions, and the person was like, oh no. They looked, no, no,
Mhm.
and I was like, okay, so like, what do you think about that decision? And they're like, maybe this was false, but the COVID is a hoax. And I was like, I kind of understand where you're coming from, and I can understand your distrust for what's going on. But this is the information. These are the sources for you to look at stuff. And I hope you make the right decision. I took the vaccine. If you have any questions about it, let me know. So stuff like that was kind of the kind of approach I had, not pushing,
Mhm.
but just being there to just offer some kind of information and hoping that people make the best decisions for themselves.
A lot of doctors and health professionals I know, they're a little bit apprehensive when it comes to that intersection between social media and medicine. They actually don't see the application of Facebook or Twitter in the professional realm. So I think you bring up so many good points in terms of going online to promote proper information or correct false information. But what are some other actionable tips that you could share with other physicians who may be listening to the podcast on how they can utilize social media to help correct all that misinformation that's out there?
So a few things. One, I recognize that I'm not a public health expert. I am not a vaccine expert. And so, I know that being a doctor, being a physician in the communities I serve, it's easy for people to come talk to me because I'm approachable. I tend to and learn to push people towards the right sources. And then amplifying those voices. So when, one of my good friends, Chidi Akusobi, does a lot of Pictionaries and stuff about vaccines and in general. So like anytime he'd post something, I would amplify that. On my social media page, anytime Risa Hashino would do something, I would amplify that. And I think those are, and then also educating myself. So like as physicians, we educate ourselves about this because like, they make these memes and they make these jokes that, especially in minority communities, once you become a doctor, I don't care if you're a podiatrist, if someone has a headache, they're going to come to you and
Mhm.
ask you, what should I do about this? Because you're a doctor, and that's what happens. And so educating yourself on these things, but also knowing the limits to your knowledge and amplifying voices of people who you think are experts about these things.
Now, how much of the blame lies on the feet of the social media platforms themselves? How much responsibility should Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube themselves to police this type of misinformation online?
Oh my, that's like a charged topic too right now these days. I think there's blame to go in many ways, right? There's people who are posting these things, and we come into these arguments about freedom of speech versus all of these. So I try to shy away from stuff like this, and I think there's blame to go around. I think it's helpful for mediums to be able to sort of police things in a way where if something is clearly false, for example, if someone said like a public figure died or something stupid like that, like that stuff needs to go away because the public figure is alive and well and
Mhm.
walking around, you know. But at the same time, we also have to equip ourselves and equip the people in our communities with tools to be able to see stupid stuff like that and ignore it.
And my final question, what is your take-home message that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience?
I have a few just lessons that I've learned throughout this. One is, when you're doing stuff like this, I like to think of myself as a change agent. I try to push for changes, whether it's health disparities, whether it's health equity. It's tough because there'll be a lot of no's, and don't be discouraged. Keep pushing because you're doing important work, and people will realize that. A second thing is finding mentors. I have been fortunate enough to have had some great mentors, like too many to name, like Howard Foreman, who's like during my MD and MBA years, the chair of my department, Dr. Gail D'Onofrio, who's been like she's so passionate about these things and exudes that passion. Kristen Garuya, Ambrose Wan. These are people who have equipped me and supported me throughout various things, endeavors that I've had, and finding those mentors, because those would be the people who would continue to push you and who would have the connections to help you to be able to achieve great things. And then the third thing, strive to listen to understand as opposed to correct. We are in such a place where people are so quick to correct things, and you say one thing and trouble for you. So I think we just need to learn to listen and learn to like appreciate other people's point of view. Oh, and then one more. Vaccines are great. Please get your shot ASAP.
Emmanuel, thank you so much for sharing your time and insight, and thanks again for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, if people want to connect with me related to, because I like to mentor a lot of especially people underrepresented minorities in medicine, please hit me up on Twitter. I am Dr._Mannyo, Mannyo, or Instagram, Dr. Mannyo. Just find me. I just love to see people of color, people that are underrepresented, pushing to do great things in medicine, and would love to connect. So hit me up, please.
Excellent. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.